Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. The book we're doing this week is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I am your host, William, and with me are my other hosts,
Maria and Katie.
And Maria had previously read this book, but this is the first time for me and Katie. Naomi Novik is an author I really like, and we actually previously read her book Spinning Silver, which had some varied response, I think, from people. But Deadly Education is very different, I think, than the other stuff she's written. Wouldn't you say, Maria?
Very. I've also read her other standalone fantasy book, Uprooted, and it is completely different from anything else she's written. The closest I can get is its British feeling, and the Temeraire series was British feeling, and that's what I got.
So basically, in a nutshell, it's about wizards who have to go to a college for wizards where there's a bunch of demon magic things trying to kill them.
Don't you mean a Harry Potter fan
It's
fiction?
the Harry Potter murder Hogwarts is what I think of it as, the murder college, where, it's...
It's more like high school because you graduate at 18, so it doesn't really feel like
I just
college.
think of it as college because...
It's murder.
Murder
It's
high
murder
school.
high school.
But yeah, basically the students there are wizards, and there's a bunch of mana demons essentially trying to kill them all.
Malia
Demons trying to kill them all the time, and in that world there's a distinction between mana, which you get from life force, and Malia you get from killing stuff. And the main character, Elle, is really drawn towards using Malia and is basically, I think as Maria said, basically like Lord Voldemort if Voldemort had a good mom. And so she's constantly trying not to murder everybody around her, even though that's her the way her magic wants to go.
Go down a bad path, yeah.
Yeah, and then do you want to talk a little bit, Maria, about how that plays out in terms of the culture of the college?
Yeah, so within the college, high school murder Hogwarts, people take different tracks of what they do. You're either a what are they called? Incantations, alchemy, or artificer tracks, and the goal is just to survive long enough to get good grades to get through to graduation. But everybody has their own affinity. Most people's affinity leads to whether they're good. Like if you have an affinity that means you're really good with working with metals, then you're probably going to be an artificer or an alchemist. And her affinity, as Will said, is destruction and mayhem and kind of evil. And a huge part of her character is that her father's family, she was raised by her single mother, and her father's family, he was Indian, they find her father's family eventually, and as a young girl, she goes to meet them and she's super excited. And then her great-grandmother has a vision of Elle in the future, that she's going to be this harbinger of death and destruction and doomsday. And that kind of follows her entire life. People don't like her just when they meet her. She has a hard time. Her mother and her live in a commune in England, and nobody in the commune likes her, but everybody loves her mother. And her mother's kind of like the hedge witch, comfy
she's like the goddess of the wizard community. She's like this revered creature of lore.
She's a hippie. She's a wizard hippie. In the college, they're basically the high school, they're being constantly attacked by different demons. Like if they go to the bathroom, they're getting attacked. If they go to lunch, they get attacked regularly and ambushed. And the story really kicks off when there's another student in Elle's year called Orion Lake, who basically is like a demon hunter just naturally. He just naturally goes around and kills these animals all the time.
His affinity?
Yeah, exactly. And so basically
he reminds me of Hercules when in the original was it Disney movie?
Yeah.
When he's a baby and he naturally can just annihilate creatures. So that's essentially...
Yeah, that's exactly him. And so she gets really annoyed, and Elle is very sarcastic. And since me and Maria have been talking so much, Katie, what did you think of the book overall?
I thought it was really... considering the author has her background in Archive of Our Own, it truly speaks volumes of Archive of Our Own. I thought it was far more... What do I want to say for this? It's like indulging into a candy. It's because she gives us all the bits we know we want out of the plot, instead of truly being surprising. Although there are that doesn't to say that it's very predictable. There are a lot of scenes that it was engaging and I enjoyed the whole thing, and for some reason it was very fun, despite the fact that the writing was not that good.
Them's fighting words. My general impressions of the book, where I think I liked it more than Katie, it was the first book in a while where I was actually like really interested towards the end, or like I was just actually engaged in reading it with it, which in our 5 episodes, this is probably the first time that's really where I was like, oh, I want to see what happens next. But yeah, I could see how Katie is saying there are some problems, and I think there are some pacing issues a little bit. Well, not pacing issues. I think there's some issues with the ending, and I think I overall found it fun. But Maria needs to talk. So
Well, no, because I'm kind of in between the two of you. Like I had fun. The big issue for me with this one is, number one, I think it's, of what we've read of her, the youngest. Like it feels like it's for a younger audience, especially if you come from Temeraire or even Spinning Silver. Even though some of the characters in Spinning Silver are younger or like the same age, they just feel older because of what's happening in their life. But for me, the big issue, there's a fuck ton of exposition, Naomi. Like, what we doing? And she does it in a way where when I listened to it on the audiobook the first time, it didn't strike me how much exposition there was, because the voice actress did a really good job of sounding like she was just talking to you and just telling you all this stuff. So it felt like a conversation where you just weren't talking that much. But then when I was reading it, because I read it this time, I was like, oh man, we're really like, the entire first chapter is like, Orion Lake saves her, and it's this big scene, and the rest of it is her just giving you the context that leads up to why she's pissed that Orion Lake saved her. Like, that's it. And it kind of follows that way, and it really takes until about halfway through the book for like the actual plot to kind of kick in. And that for me was one of the issues on my second read. And I found a lot of the stuff that I really cared for that got me were some of the smaller things that happened.
That exposition, man. So that's what I really hated about this book the most. It was far too much introspection. It ruined the pacing. Now, granted, honestly, within the genre and the way this book is presented, it actually fits quite well, but it is not to my liking at all whatsoever. There's too much exposition on the reasoning behind things, which I really enjoy. Like in her other book, Spinning Silver, I really enjoyed the trading process in the book and the logic behind why the character made the choices she did. But in this one, it was littered, fulfilled, like totally to the brim with exposition, and I was bored to the point where I skipped a lot.
Yeah, I actually see both of what you're saying. On just quickly, yeah, it feels like a much younger book than her other books in that it has a very YA feel to it, and it doesn't feel as like her other books really have a great sense of place and atmosphere, and in this case it doesn't quite have that. The exposition thing, that was what struck me the most when I first started reading, was, oh my god, there's a lot of it, and it shouldn't work as well as it does, because it actually did kind of work for me.
It does. It does.
It's not the complete killer that...
Agreed. It does work.
It does. Yeah, it's not the complete killer it would be with other books, even though this is not as interesting a world as like her Chimera books or Spinning Silver to me. The world is like a little bit bland-ish, but the exposition continues even very late into the novel. There's a major plot point later that like is mentioned for the second time right then, and they're still explaining what's going on. So much of this book is explanation, and the first person helps with that because it gives a chance for Elle's personality to come through, but it's still a lot to get through.
I have this sneaking suspicion, and this is probably 120% false, but I can't help but feel like this was once upon a time on Archive of Our Own, and it was male on male, and it was if Voldemort had been in Harry's class, and that was the whole
Nah, someone would have found it. Like,
no, of course,
yeah.
But it rings true to that voice and tone of the novel, does it not?
For me, it feels like an anime, and it feels like an anime through the perspective of the tsundere character that you don't normally, because like Orion Lake is your classic, because I just started watching an anime for the first time, and the main character is just kind of bland but powerful, but he's just like a quiet, shuffling, just like a good guy, like he's a good boy, you know, and that's normally who the main character is, and this is, if the tsundere that he has a crush on who eventually wins over was the main character, and you're seeing her process what he's doing and just being super pissed all the time.
Yeah, that is totally true. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's true.
100%.
For me, that I loved, because it's just a perspective you don't get a lot, because Elle can be a bitch. Now she's conditioned herself this way to be really spiky, but it really takes her a while to like bring it down.
I didn't find her to be a super likable character. I really liked Orion just because his like complete nerdness of being really good at fighting is funny. Like they're like, and they have some really good interactions. Elle, it took me a while to warm up on it. And I don't think I ever quite got there in terms of liking her as a character.
I actually quite liked her just fine as a character. I enjoyed her thoroughly. I felt like I could slip into her skin and understand where that character was coming from and stuff. I really and actually really, really, really liked her character. I actually think Orion Lakes is just like he literally feels like a piece of like papyrus paper about to be torn to me. He is just like the flimsiest little like he is a caricature of what he is. I think it's really cool how she kind of spins it and she makes him like she specifically makes him like that where at the end of the book where the mom says what she says makes me feel like, oh, was he like a simulacrum or whatever, where he's like created purely for the purpose of like fulfilling this like some sort of prophecy, the one that maybe the grandmother spoke of. Yeah, I feel like he's like a total bore.
Well, okay, so he is to an extent. She tries to broaden his character out later in the book so that Elle kind of understands more of what's going on with him. But I will say that, yeah, for me, he does feel a little one-dimensional, but I liked that about him to an extent. I didn't find that to be a real problem.
He's a Labrador who happens to have a rocket
well, and
launcher.
I think there is a funny thing going on where like they don't say it, but she was born to be a Dark Lord and he was born to be like a demon killer, and yet they're gonna be chill pals. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is funny in that way, and I think there's gonna be something in the next couple books to come out about that. I'm assuming that's some of the mystery.
It's boring.
I disagree. I loved their friendship. I loved how like he reacted to her and she reacted to him.
I got to say I agree with you, honestly. Look, once I began reading it, I couldn't put it down. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I could easily put it down. But the point is I was so engaged in it that despite me completely, like, I wouldn't say I completely disliked the narration, but it is not, as you both know,
your cup of tea.
Yeah, no, it is not my cup of tea whatsoever. But it is very gratifying. And it is very like fulfilling in a fun sort of sense. And so, there you go.
I think a testament to the whole Orion thing is that I was actually more invested in her friendship with the two other students, the female students who become part of her team by the end of the book. Like, that to me was the most emotionally fulfilling relationship and arc in the book.
Oh, that was the best part.
I think her interactions with him are funny, but like that's one of the reasons I was more invested in like, oh, she's got friends now, and one of them was kind of evil but kind of isn't, and then one of them's kind of cool, and like I do wish the like hot bitchy chick had been on the team too.
I really wish Aria, is that her name?
Aria.
Mm-hmm. I really wish she actually, specifically her relationship with Elle, was highlighted more. I felt like she was such a also the other one, honestly, I just wish the friendship between those three women were highlighted more. It's because it already felt like Lakes was put into the background, especially when he was going through his whole like attempting to be that heroic caricature I meant. And I don't know, I kind of wanted a little more. I don't know, it was actually fine as is. The whole novel was exactly what it meant it was. And whatever she intended it to be, I feel like I fully understood. And it was perfectly complete in that sense, but it is not a book I love.
I think also part of it is that there's kind of a winnowing at the halfway point where it becomes very sort of plot focused, and the plot movements aren't necessarily driven too much by the character relationships. In terms of, she says she's doing these things because she likes Orion now and she has an investment, and so like there's some, but a lot of the plot movements to me felt a little disconnected from the characters, and so like the plot is a lot of fun, but it's not necessarily deep.
On the second read, there's a bunch of little clues that I picked up about Luz and Adia's friendship with her that are kind of like highlighted, because a lot of names get thrown at you in the first third of the book while she's interacting with people. And so for me, like a moment that hit me much harder the second time than the first time was when she does the like revert to yourself or like just center yourself spell when Orion accidentally pumps her with too much mana, and it heals Lou, and she, like, her nails, like, she unmollifies.
Well, we should say that Lou, up to till that point, had been one of the students who was secretly
A maleficer. Yeah, she'd come in with a lot of rats, and she was killing them for mana.
and so it's like a thing where you're slowly doomed over time to become more and more thirsty, much like an incel.
And also your body's just gonna collapse on itself eventually.
Yeah, so that was her thing, is then she gets reset halfway through and decides to take like a different path and become closer with Elle.
And it was so cute, and I love the little rats. But yeah, her friendship with them was absolutely a highlight for me. I also like, so here's my theory on the prophecy. If you look at it, it says she's going to destroy the enclaves. And I think she is, but by just dismantling a system that only helps really rich people and people that are in enclaves. And so I think, like, we're going to get to the end of the series, and that's just like what's going to happen. And I think that's how the prophecy is going to get filled.
This is a little spoilery because it's toward the end, because it's the end of the book, but you know how she gets a book on how to build an enclave, which is like a magical protection camp, so to speak. And so I thought what was going to happen is, when they're going into the bowels at the very last minute of the castle, I thought she was going to use that spell to make the college itself like an enclave almost. Because otherwise, the book being there is sort of like a weird Chekhov's gun of, like, the spell in it doesn't really do anything.
Well, I think the spell that was the important part was the phase shift spell. Like, it wasn't the enclave. Like, I don't think they could build an enclave in the middle of the school. The school itself is not part of the actual world. And so I think the phase shift spell, but I think it's going to play, like, she's literally building a chest for her book. So I think that spell and creating an enclave is going to appear in later ones.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that the enclave part isn't even remotely connected to the plot of this book. It's just more along the lines of, oh, she has to fucking learn the language to this book to even understand it. Besides, oh yeah, by the way, listeners who are wondering what that's about, apparently you have to randomly learn languages very frequently in order to understand spells, and if you don't learn them in ridiculous amounts of time, like days, then you can, like, die, because all the spells you have are the book you've randomly summoned that is only in Sanskrit or Japanese or Chinese or something. And if you don't learn that language super quickly, then you just straight up can't use any of the spells that you just learned.
They don't have teachers at the school. The school itself just, like, throws them spells and books and things they need, and so it's kind of passive aggressive at times if you don't do what it tells you to.
If the school thinks, like, if you look too hard at, like, a Japanese book, the school will think you're now studying Japanese, and it will give you spells in Japanese. And until you learn the spells, because you get them out of a void, and until you learn the spells, you can't get any other spells, which means you'll be stuck with whatever you had in your brain. And then if you never learn the language, congratulations, you got sophomore spells for life.
Yeah, that was one aspect of the book that I thought was absolutely fantastic. It's because I've conceptualized that before in, I don't know, other literary scenarios, but never fully realized in that regard. And I think it is so cool that you are that fucked from the get-go. Like, there's, like, unless you're a genius, essentially. I don't know if these wizard people, like, run on a different intelligence system, but they're all, like, running on 100% over anybody else their age who's probably human.
So that's one thing. I actually did like the world building into this. I liked the idea that the idea behind the school, because we haven't got into this, the reason the school exists is because as you're a young little wizard, your body's filling up with mana, and the Maleficaria, which they call the Mals, want to eat your mana. They won't eat older wizards as much because tougher, harder to get through, when the young little baby wizards are so easy. So they'll go after children, and enclaves are like the protective little wizard cities, are super protective, but even they have a really hard time keeping out the Mals. In a normal enclave, you had a 1 in 7 chance of surviving. I don't remember what it was. So they built this school to be completely separated. Like, it's not on Earth. It's in the void, and it only has one entry point, which is through the graduation hall that connects to the actual world. And so you get sent here to increase your odds of survival, which is now 1 in 4 people survive. And so this world is just a hostile world. Like, Elle, before she even gets into the school, has been attacked by Mals like a bajillion times. And so everything is like, you're constantly watching your back. And I liked some of the lore and all of that went into this. And, like, people don't shower a lot because...
Yeah, it really fed into all my anxieties, honestly.
Yeah, they don't shower a lot because the bathroom mouths in the drains are gonna eat you.
I thought it helped too that her tone was kind of funny more than realistic at times. I mean, most of the time, because it's like people just get murdered and it's like, okay, that happened. There's not a realistic emotional reaction, but I think that's fine. That's pretty normal. And so what Maria was saying about in terms of the world, the mouths going after young wizards and the school being built is one of the other really large portion or pillars of world building and themes that she wants to look at in the book, which is that there are enclaves, right, which are basically like the rich wizards all live together in a safe place, and their kids, when they go to this school, are better protected because they already have networks in place and they, can draw upon
Power sharers.
power sharing, and like they already have good connections and they can get stuff from other people. And she kind of Elle theorizes that the only reason they actually let the poor kids in is so that they're bait for the mouse, so not all of their kids die. It's kind of like, just if 10% of the herd is going to get culled, make sure it's not your kids. And there's a lot of that towards the end of the book about class imbalance and which I think is cool. That goes back to what you're saying in terms of she's going to destroy the Enclave society, which we'll see.
Which, Maria, prior to our recording, was discussing some interesting discussions on the book from its readers. And I think it's really funny that the fact that, like, if that is true and she is a class destroyer so everyone is somewhat equal, that really goes against a lot of what the intense overzealous critics said about the book.
So background. There was a lot of backlash against this book initially. So I read it, and then a couple months later was brought into the backlash, which was there's a couple of things that happened that people had really strong opinions about being problematic. Two of which I think are really no, you missed the mark. One of which I can see, and Naomi Novik herself addressed it and has since taken this part out of copies of the book. The first is that Elle is half Indian, but she's not Indian enough. And which a lot of people who come from mixed backgrounds or who are a different ethnicity but don't speak the language and who have been told all their life you're not this thing enough have spoken against.
I would also like to mention the fact that she was raised by a Irish or Scottish or British mother. Welsh. There you go. All of those essentially. And so anyway, she was completely raised by that mother. So it would only make sense that, considering her Indian half of her family shunned her due to this poor foreboding nature of her destiny, that's all she of course she's not going to be an Indian enough.
The comments people have for that is that then why make her half Indian in the first place? Why not just make her Welsh?
Because that probably makes a difference either later on in the plot, or also why not?
But it also speaks to Elle's isolation. She grows up looking different from everyone around her, so I do think it is part of her character.
I understand the criticism to an extent, but as a child of two cultures myself, there is a lot of and I mean, my mother is Hispanic and was raised so, but even so, there's over time that culture kind of dissipates to a certain extent. And so to me, it makes complete sense that she would just not have any real connection to that part of her culture. And so I think that makes sense, and it's something a lot of people deal with. And she doesn't really deal with it in the book, so I could understand that as a criticism. In terms of the criticism of why not just make her white Welsh then, well, what are we doing here? Do we want more representation or do we not? We can't have it both ways. We can't both be like, hey, James Bond should be black, but if he's not going to be from the ghetto, it won't be good representation.
Thank you.
You understand what I'm saying? There's a certain amount to which I understand that people would want more of a cultural reckoning inside, but I think it's actually pretty fine to just have her be a brown person.
It is. It's perfectly fine. And also, she does include it to some degree. That's how she connects with some other students, if you notice. There is definitely also a background race thing, I feel like just because naturally, based off the names, Chloe is part of the Enclave.
And so the other controversy was that Elle is Indian, half Indian, and Elle doesn't shower, and Elle's dirty, and that's playing into the stereotype of Indian people.
Everyone's dirty.
Being dirty. But yes, within the context, and that's one of those things where I think people took bits and pieces of the text with no context, because everyone doesn't shower. If you don't have support network, which Elle doesn't, because again, that has to do with her affinity and the fact that she really like puts people off. If you don't have a good network of people, you can't afford to shower by yourself, and you need people to watch your back. And so this just plays, and everybody doesn't shower.
I'd say it's not really a valid criticism because A, there's a very strong world building reason for it in terms of it's really dangerous to shower. B, a lot of people are like that in the novel. It's not exclusively like Indian people or, of the Indian diaspora are like that. And C, it's not really something that's used to judge Elle as a character by the narrative. So sometimes the books will have in-universe reasons for nasty stereotypes, and they do that to kind of because it's just they want they're just like not nice books. But in this case, I never felt like the narrative itself was trying to condemn her for it or be like, ugh, those people.
Nobody ever commented on it. Like, nobody ostracized Elle because she didn't shower, which you could take as like a comment about it being associated. Even Enclave kids could only shower once a week. Like, everybody kind of stinky, So it's never brought up as one of the reasons why she gets isolated. The reason she gets isolated is because she's a little spooky and she's a little bitchy. So like I said, those were the two that I think were really taken out of context, and I don't give too much. And again, certain people, like there have been comments made by people who are half Indian that felt Elle was bad representation, but there were also comments from people who thought Elle was good representation. So it's one of those things where it's really like how people interact with it is how people interact with it. But I don't think from Naomi herself, those are like intended issues. Now, the one thing that I think like she did apologize for and that I can see apologizing for is she has a point where she talks about the different hairstyles people have. Most people either have it really close shaved or they have like just up to their neck because things can either grab you by the hair or like live in your hair. And she said a lot of students don't do dreadlocks because there are these lock leeches that will like plant eggs in your locks, and then the little leech babies come out and attach to your head and kill you slowly, or something else kills you because you're weakened. And a lot of people found that this played into harmful stereotypes, that even though Naomi herself might not have intended this, it was connecting to harmful stereotypes that surround Black people and their dreadlocks. And so she did apologize and said, she probably should have had a
sensitivity
reader go through it, and that it was absolutely not her intention, but she sees why it plays into harmful stereotypes. And that's the one thing that, like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's valid.
You didn't mean it that way, but there's a whole discourse happening around this issue that you were like unintentionally being insensitive to. But that's the one
I also don't think it's like cancelable as like an offense. You know what I mean? Like it's a kind of minor thing she didn't think about and included that can be lifted out easily.
Yeah, and the fact that she apologized for it. I mean, like, look, I don't know.
Well, I think you have to take. People don't really like to do this, but I think you have to take authors within the context of their work sometimes. I know The Author is Dead is a big thing, but she did write an 11-book series about Napoleonic dragons that's all about the evils of colonialism. This is an author who is trying to do good, and it's a sentence in a book. Whereas the other two issues people had it would have been more pervasive, but I don't actually think are valid, so it's not really too much of a problem for me.
I think overall she actively is playing with stereotypes. Like, again, Orion is the, like, he reminds me of so many classic anime characters. Like, literally, I'm watching this thing right now called Darwin's Game, and, like, the guy has the personality of a piece of toast, but in a way, like, where Orion, part of the joke is that Orion, like, engages with people with the personality of a piece of toast. So, like, the book's in on the joke, where I think a lot of animes aren't.
Also, he kind of seems like a sociopath, does he not? Like, he's so strange. Like,
it's so, like, he's so, and I love that part where she's like, do you not like Lou? And he's like, no, she's fine. I like her. Like, no, that's not the problem. But, like, he has this problem of since a young age, he's just been really good. And it's literally like Hercules bashing the snakes on the rocks, and he's just been killing mouse, and people have just been utilizing him to kill mouse. And something that she talks about is all the Enclave, like he's from the New York Enclave, and everyone there just treated him as a wonder boy who defeats mouse. And so Wonder Boy. And I think it just kept him, like, he took that on as like because Elle doesn't treat him like a hero, and that's why like they begin to bond. And then all the other people that he ends up getting close to eventually just stop treating him like the Messiah.
It's the femme Hades / Hercules fan fiction no one wanted.
Essentially, but again, she's
Or everyone.
she's literally Voldemort, because like Voldemort had the affinity for all this dark stuff, super super powerful, but like Voldemort with a good upbringing. Like it's there. The school's constantly
I did feel
whispering.
like the way that was implemented was a little bit it was a little insisted upon too much. Like I get why she thinks that and because it's from her point of view, but to me it felt like it got a little old after a while hearing her talk about how like powerful she was. And then by the end of the book she does one really powerful thing halfway through, but that was one of the problems I felt with the climax was that she didn't really do anything particularly interesting in it.
It was so boring.
Well, there also just wasn't a twist, I think. I think the problem with the climax is that the plan they have to enact goes off fine. Like, there's not really an issue with it that requires them to rethink things. And so I think that could have been reworked and made a little bit more complicated.
I think that was intentional. I think she purposefully wanted this book for Elle never to actually show her powers to anyone.
I read that as well.
Yeah, so I think it was intentional. I think something in the second book is going to make that like, oh, this is why. But I did find that, like, I did, especially on the second read through, because I noticed it more. Like, she just doesn't, because at one point, Katie was like, she's OP. And I'm like, but she never does anything. Like, she does one thing. Orion is OP, like, as far as within the book world. I'm having a similar issue. I'm reading Dune, which we're reviewing again, and I'm having an issue with, like, I think Dune's gonna pull a fast one where it's like, he's a messiah. Well, except he's not. We're doing a, like, but they're so ham-fisted with the messiah part in the first half, you're just like, it's too much. It would have been more surprising if you had just sprinkled the clues.
One thing I'll say that's kind of interesting is that this is Uprooted was the one that she wrote that you read. I haven't read that one. But in the books I have read, the Tamara series, Spinning Silver, and now this one, there's a reoccurring thread of Naomi Novik being very interested in power relationships. That's explicitly in Spinning Silver where the Fae can, like, it's like their word is bond. Like, they literally physically, in terms of physics, can't do something for nothing, and their society is very transactional in that way. And then, the Tamara series was about dragons and dragon riders and society and how those should relate to each other. And how the power between those would shift. And then in this one, it's all about the alliances between the students. And again, this social game of, if I give you this, will you give me that? Well, then you do this. There's like an economy of favors within the school, essentially. So it's kind of an interesting leitmotif that you see throughout her work.
Something that occurred to me during the story is that Elle goes through a lot more than most people. She has to literally play a game of chess times 12 every second of the day. And I feel like if Naomi doesn't pay us off with everyone else understanding that level or some recognition in some regard, but like without being, when some of these characters reacted to Elle's abilities, it was candied. Like, it was exactly what you would want. It was, except for without maybe a little more, like there was no deep recognition of the true power or the skill or the revelation of the moments of Elle's power. And I feel like it would better be off that it only happens between her and one other character, because then it can focus in on the relationship and the revelation of her like true power or whatever you want to.
It's gonna be her and Orion.
Or Adia. Like,
Adia already knows that she killed the Wallmouth.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. I think I would love them to become lesbians.
I mean, it would be very nice.
I picked up on that vibe so hard in this book.
I did not.
Not that there, no. Novik or / Naomi / however you. So she did not plant that whatsoever, but I could see the fandom building.
Fandom does not build around female-female relationships. Maybe if they were both gender balanced.
Oh, are you fucking kidding me? You're just not a woman.
Believe me, I have looked.
That's his favorite stuff. What are you talking about?
I have looked, and there just is not that much. It's too.
That is all he wants.
Not nearly as much as male on male, but let me tell you, that lesbian subcategory, if you know the ins, you can find.
You know what? We're gonna have to talk about this afterwards.
I don't know. I kind of ship Orion and her. Like, they're like a cute odd couple. And again, I like the like goofy Labrador who's really powerful with like the gloomy witch in the background. I don't know.
That's so much anime I've recently watched, actually.
I like the salty teens of it. Though I will say, I thought for some reason Elle was older.
Yes.
Like I got the impression she was closer to her like early 20s. I think it's just because the narrator in the book is near her 20s. Like you're like, oh yeah, she's supposed to be 16 at one point here, and I was like, oh, I did not realize that, which I think does change her character a little bit. I wouldn't say that I really ship her and anyone. I think her and Orion are kind of. I like how they interact, especially towards the end of the book. But like romantically,
yeah, no, I'm totally here to watch her and Orion be cute little friends, and eventually once they graduate school and end up together. Because I don't think we're gonna see their relationship. I think it's gonna be another Spinning Silver where like the book ends, like the final book ends as they actually become a couple, and I love that. I'm here for it.
That's fine. I mean, look, that's fine. I actually like that just as well. It doesn't matter to me. I don't need the full relationship depending on the story. The story is fun. It's like watching an action flick.
It's like
it's not a
I think
you were never really there.
It's fun and it's well paced and it's actually fairly well written, but it's a little bit insubstantial.
Yep, it's not deep. You see what you get.
I think for this book, I've definitely got the sense that this was Naomi Novik taking a break from like her big serious books that she researches a lot and just being like, I'm going to write something fun.
She just had fun. Naomi Novik had fun. She did what she came to do. This probably was so easy to write. She just...
Oh my god, and you know she fucking made bank off it.
I think when you said that it has kind of a fanfic feel, that's almost a certain part of it is that there is a joy inherent to fanfic that you feel just like a freeing. And you can feel that here. You can just feel her being like, hey, I'm just having fun. I'm not going to worry about a bunch of this stuff.
I'm writing what I want to write, and I'm not worrying about it.
Honestly, that was my favorite part of it. That's why I wanted to read it so bad. It's because I knew she was going to take turns that I wasn't going to expect, and that was 100% true.
I had no idea they were going into the graduation hall by the end of the book. At no point.
I didn't know every scene to scene was a surprise. And so, you know what? I think that's one of the strengths of this book is the fact that you literally can't predict it.
And I like how there was no character who's villainous. You know, like even characters
grayscale.
Even characters who were like presented as like being like eventually like get humanized, and even Elle has to be like, okay, we'll hang out. But like, and I think one of the benefits is you get to have the Maleficaria that like fill in for the big bad. But even then, individually they weren't bad. It was the system and Orion imbalancing things that created the issue. But still, what Orion did, nobody could say was bad. And I really liked that in this book. I did too. In the last book that me and Will read, there was a big bad that was like pure evil and I don't mind it, but it just like he ended up also just not being as impressive for the amount of buildup, and the battle was like a chapter.
Like Game of Thrones last season.
Oh god, we don't talk about that.
We had a little bit of vibes like that, and so I really appreciated that like there was stakes to this, like in people's lives were at stake, but there was no like put your finger on it. This is the bad thing that you have to deal with.
Like it's like a fan fiction where you actually explore characters and you actually have fun depicting them. Even though the writing skill isn't nearly as poised and honed as maybe Spinning Silver, it's fun.
I came from Spinning Silver and Uprooted and then read this, and I was like, Naomi, what did you... The first 2 chapters, I was like, what did you do, Naomi? I loved it.
It feels like an entirely different writer. Like, it does not feel the same.
Hearing everything, I think Uprooted would be the book you two enjoy of hers the most, because it has good pacing, way more stuff happens in it. From the, like, shit's just always happening. The main character is less annoying. Like, a lot of the complaints you've had with Spinning Silver and this book, Uprooted, and it by far is her most well-acclaimed. From what I've seen, Uprooted is like...
Well, it's good. It's the last one we're going to read, apparently.
Eventually.
We should mention that next week we're going to be doing The Last Graduate. I'll probably release this the week The Last Graduate comes out. So that'll probably be like the next podcast that we do. I'm excited to see... I finished this book and I was like, oh, I want to read the sequel. Which is like not a feeling I really get from all books.
You ever have.
Right. So like I was like, okay, I kind of want to read the sequel. And I think maybe it'll be interesting to see, because hopefully there won't be as much exposition, because that's all out of the way.
And they're still in the school. Like, they're not going to a new place where that would require a ton more exposition.
So if she continues with that, I'm going to die inside.
It'll be interesting. It'll be, because I think she'll have to fill it with something else. So I think that'll be interesting.
Dialogue, maybe? That would be nice.
I meant plot, but yes, okay. Do any of us have any last things we wanted to talk about in regards to it?
It's a fun book. It's not the deepest you'll ever read.
I'd recommend it.
It's a jaunt.
That's it for this episode. Subscribe to the channel or the podcast wherever you're listening to this. Either next week or the week after, we'll be doing The Last Graduate. So to see our thoughts on that, make sure to follow us. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.